Hello everybody. In this video we're going to talk about some or three functions in Microsoft Excel that are very helpful and useful, and they save a lot of time in some cases. And we will see in this example how they can be very helpful. So the example that I'm gonna be working on is a list of students in elementary school or whatever school, and they are sorted by names from A to C, so we have like 78 students here. And each one is in a class, and the classes are named by number, by colors. So there is the blue class, the red class, yellow, green, purple class. And we have the class of each student corresponding to him or her, and then we have the grade of each student in the third column. So let's say, for instance, I want to calculate the number of students in the blue class, or I want to calculate the average grade for the students in the yellow class, or I want to calculate the sum of the grades of the students in purple class, whatever the operation that I want to do. But all these operations are specific for a group of the students that meet a specific condition. So I cannot do the operation over the whole range. I want the operation to be done for specific cells in the range, again, that they match specific criteria. So one thing that you might think of is that, okay, I need to do some calculations related to a group of the students. So let's use the information that we know before from the previous videos. It's first to use the filter option, and with the filter option you can choose to show only the students in the blue class. And by doing this, you have only the data that you want, and then you can calculate the average of these cells, for instance. And you think that this is what you're trying to calculate, but actually this is not true. Let's say you want to calculate the sum, and this is what will make us sure that this is not right. So these are 13 students. The average of 81 would give us a sum of around 1,040, something like that. So if you calculate the sum of these grades, then it will be 6,000 and something, which is not logical. The sum of these numbers can never be 6,000. And this mistake, or the number is not right, because actually you are not doing the calculations for these specific numbers that you see. You are showing column 2, 12, 15, 35 until 77, but your calculations are not on these specific rows. It is over the whole range from C2 to C77. And that's why the number is huge, because you are not doing the calculations on the exact range that you are looking, or that you see with your eyes here. Because Microsoft Excel didn't delete the rows, it just it's not showing them to you. So they're still there, and they are still included in the calculations. So this is not the way to do it. So one other thing that you might think of is that I will sort them from A to Z, and I'll pick the range. For instance, I want to do the calculations in the blue, then I will do the average and the sum or everything on this range. This is a solution which will give right answers, of course, but this is not applicable in many cases. Sometimes you would need the list to be sorted by name, and you do not have the option to change the arrangement of the table. So you need to think of something else that will do the counting, the sum, the average, and all these things using a specific criteria. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So let's say I want to count the students in class B. How many students are there? Class blue, I'm saying, at the blue class. You want to know how many students are there in the blue class. So there is a function that's called count. And count, it counts the number of cells in the range that contain numbers. There is count A, which counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So there are, and this is count blank. That is count the number of empty cells in a specific range of cells. So there are some count functions, but none of the three functions will work for us. We need to use the fourth one, which is COUNTIF. And this COUNTIF, it counts the number of cells within a range that meet the given condition. So this is exactly what we're looking for. So I need to count the number of students in this range, okay, who are in the blue class. And it tells me that they are 13. So I do not need to worry about the sorting of the cells in the table. It will automatically calculate the number of students in the blue class. And let's for instance try to test the function. I will change this to red, so it's 12. And let's calculate the number of students in the red class, and they are 14. So if I move it back to blue, oops, then both changed. So it's working perfectly now. You can calculate whatever the criteria that you put, and it will count the number of cells that match this criteria. So this is the first part of or the first function that we are going to talk about today. So the next thing is to calculate the average, for instance. So I want to calculate the average grade for blue class, or let's put something else, the purple class students. Okay. So when I do this, I need to keep in mind that I have two different ranges. A range that contains the class color, which is where I'm gonna check the criteria to be satisfied in. And there is the column of the grade that I'm gonna do the calculations on. So I will have two ranges as input ranges here. Here I had only the option to put one range because I'm just counting. So I'm not doing any other calculations other than counting the number of the cells. But here I will check the condition and do the calculations. It could be on the same range or in other range. That's why you have an optional second range to add. So I'm gonna use the average if, okay, and it's gonna ask you to give the range, the criteria, and the average range. And let's take a look at this closely. It tells me here in the range that this is the range of cells you want evaluated. This is where you are gonna check your criteria, and this is the criteria, the condition as number, expression, or text, whatever. And then the average criteria, and this is, the average range. It's the actual cells to be used to find the average. So this is where the calculations are gonna be done. I forgot to mention something in the count that I need to say before I go to the average. So I'm sorry for confusion. So let's say I'm going to use the count if condition in this range, and I want to I can put the condition or the criteria as numbers. So I can say how many students got score of 90. So I have 195, there are 2 81, there are 2, whatever thing, or whatever number you want to check, it's gonna work. You might need to know how many students scored more than 80, for instance. And to do this, it's gonna be what you expect that it's gonna work, because this is a condition. So you expect this to be a proper condition that Microsoft Excel understands. However, if you try to get it to work, it's not gonna be accepted. And it took me some time to figure out why it's not working, until I found out that you need to put this in a very strange way. I do not understand till now why Microsoft Excel understands the condition that has greater than or smaller than this way. But you have to put it like this and this. So you're kind of creating a text by concatenating the greater than symbol with the 80 number. And by doing this, it is working. Again, I do not understand why, but this is the way it works. Let's check it. So I have this greater than 80. So if I make it 60, for instance, it's got less by 1. And if I'm get it back, it's gonna go back to 42. So it's working, but I don't understand why it works. You can do one other check about it by making it smaller than or equal, and the sum should be the 78, which is the total number of students, which is satisfied here. So it's a point to keep in mind, and I needed it a lot, so I had to figure out how to do it. So to get the average, I'm gonna use the average if, and then I'm gonna check the criteria on this range. And the criteria, I'd say pink, I am purple. And then the average range would be this. So the average is 86.07. Let's try to check it that it's working. So I'm gonna make this 60. So the average changed. Let's try to change the pink, for instance, to make sure that the pink doesn't change anything about the purple. So if I make it this 100, for instance, it didn't change. This number didn't change because it's just doing the calculations for the purple. You can, I said the second range is an optional range. So let's try to use the average if for this range of the numbers, and the criteria is greater than 80. So this is the average grade of students who scored more than 80 in the class. So if I make this 60, the number changed because it's calculating from this. And if I change this to 50, this didn't change because it's not in the range that it is using to do the calculation. So it's now saving a lot of time. The same for the sum. If I need to get the sum of grades of students, of course it doesn't have any meaning, but I'm using this to just illustrate how to use the SUMIF in pink class. So it's gonna be SUMIF. It's gonna be exactly the same argument. So I have the range, I have the criteria, pink, and then the sum range would be this column, and it's 974. So if I have any number here in the pink as this 60, I'll make it 90. The sum is increasing, and if I change the purple, this didn't change. Okay, so it's working. The same thing can be done with the basic arguments, which is just what range and the criteria. So I can have the sum if of the cells here that match the criteria of greater than 80, and it's working. So again, let's check it. If I make it 60, this didn't change, but if I make the 95 60, is changing. Okay, because this is part of the range. So it's now saving me a lot of time. I didn't need to do anything. I'm just keeping the table as is, and I didn't touch it. I'm just doing the calculations by specifying the condition that I need to fulfill, and do the calculations based on this condition. So I hope it helps, and I'll see you in the next video, inshallah. Goodbye.